Good afternoon, and thank you for watching this update presentation on how the GCSE and A-level exams are going to be awarded this year. My name's Mr. Young, and I'm the Assistant Head Teacher in charge of assessment and exams. First thing that you may have seen in the media is that the grades are going to be awarded by teacher judgment, and they may be saying teacher assessed grades. Last year they were centre assessed grades. Now we'd still like to see them as centre assessed grades because they are not going to be graded just by any one teacher. So it will be a centre decision just to make sure that consistency and fairness, and I'll go along that I'll explain that process a little bit later on. They are not going to be graded by an algorithm like last year, so we're not going to submit our grades to the exam boards and then they will use a computer system to change the grades and make them in line with previous years. That's not going to happen. Hopefully what grades we put together and put forward as a centre, they will be the grades that the students will achieve. Okay. School and college assessments will continue. So we are continuing to do mini assessments within the lessons at the moment, and there are the final assessment opportunities in a couple of weeks, and those will be going towards students' grades and being part of the evidence. This is the important part, the students, any assessments that they are going to do is only going to be on content that they have been taught. So we're aware that across the country during lockdown, there's been lots of disruption to students' learning. So topics that one school may have delivered and taught will be different to another school. So any assessments that the students will do will only be on the content that they have been taught. So curriculum areas have been getting together to decide on that content. Students will be told which evidence is going to be used to grade them. Most of it is going to be the final assessment opportunities because that is going to be done in strict examination conditions, and it will be the most recent information that we've got. So that will be the main piece of information and evidence that we will use. However, any other tests and mock exams or even homeworks that students do may be used. But again, each subject area will be talking to students about the evidence that has been used. So back onto that evidence then, it's going to come down to any evidence that we've got that could represent the student's true level of work. So this may be mocks, any tests that they've been doing, work that's already been completed within their lessons. So anything, like I say, that can show the student's true potential of what the level that they're working at can be used in evidence. Any non-exam assessment should continue. So anything like coursework. I know some of the vocational qualifications, their coursework has been continuing, and that will go and follow the same format with regards to forming their grades, and the grades that they will get to different units will add up to an overall grade. But likewise, any coursework or any extra non-examination assessments that's been carried out within lessons can go towards the student's grades and be used as evidence. Again, back onto that non-exam assessments can be used even if it's incomplete. So if there's evidence in there to show that a student has achieved a certain level, even if it's not completely finished, can still be used in evidence to go towards their final grade. Any students that are doing art and design, it's just based purely on their portfolio. And again, students are aware of that and they will only be concentrating on their portfolio. So there will be no final assessment, no final examination in those subjects. It will just be done on their portfolio that they're building up at the moment. Quite recently, just after Easter, the examination boards released question banks that schools could be using. So some subject areas have been using these to put together for the final assessment opportunities that are coming up, or even some mini assessments in lessons. So they will be used. And again, some of that information students can get themselves because it's freely available on the exam board websites. And like we say here, the results will be based on completed work that they've done, and again, any future work that we've done. We've got a deadline of the 18th of June where the results should be towards the exam boards. So any future work between now and that point can be used to generate the students' grades. Results days will be a couple of weeks earlier this year. So as we can see there, AS and A level results will be on the 10th of August. So that's a Tuesday the 10th of August. And GCSE results will be on Thursday, the 12th of August. As is usually the process, there will be an appeals process if any students are unhappy with any of their results and grades. Normally, we would make an appeal to the exam board and ask them to have a relook at students' exam papers and to remark those. But however, because we are doing that in school, firstly, appeals will come to us and we will have a look to see whether there's any mistakes or errors made with any recording or marking of the students' work. We are going through a very strict standardisation period and process within the school, so it's unlikely that any errors are made, but the process is there should students wish to have a look. You can find some more information on the Ofqual website, and there's the web address down the bottom there, and that's where this particular piece of documentation has come from. Okay, so if we go on to more of the grading process, so I was saying it's going to be teacher assessed grades or centre assessed grades within the school. So I'll just go through a little bit more on the process of how those grades are going to be determined. So the first bit will be down to the teachers, okay, and that's where the teachers will have a look at the evidence that's agreed at a department level to assign a grade in line with national standards. So this is where exam papers will be used with grading boundaries and a comparison with standards that are across the country. So we'll make sure that it doesn't matter whether they're sitting these final assessments or being graded by teachers within St John Fisher. They would get exactly the same grades if they were doing the same process in another school. Okay, it's not going to be an ideal process, but we will try to ensure that it is in line with national standards as much as possible. We'll be using grading exemplification from the exam boards to make sure that it is in line, and there'll be lots of standardisation procedures along the way. So on to that, that's where the grades and the work will be looked at in a subject area level. Okay, so it will be moderated and standardised to ensure fairness and consistency. So like I mentioned about it being fair and it doesn't matter whether the students are being assessed within John Fisher or another school, we want to make sure that it's the same within the lesson. So it doesn't matter whether they're in teacher A's lesson or teacher B's lesson. Each teacher will be working towards the same grading and the same process. And that moderation and standardisation period will be there to ensure that that's fair and to ensure that that's consistent across the whole year group, particularly with the big subjects where every single student in the year group is taking, so maths, English, science, etc. Will ensure that there's consistency across the board. Then we'll look at it on a school level. So we'll quality assure to ensure the grades are broadly in line with previous years. So as a school, we know roughly how our results turn out year on year. However, that doesn't mean that we're going to be strictly bound by the percentages that we achieve for certain grade boundaries. Remember, this is all down on evidence. So if the student's evidence indicates that they are a certain grade, then we'll award that certain grade. We won't be bound and we won't be restricted because we only had a certain amount of A grades last year, so we can only award a certain amount of A grades this year. That's not going to be the case. It's purely on evidence, and if the student's evidence indicates and shows that, then we can. The quality assurance here is just going to give us a little bit more of a sense check and then just to ask those questions of the curriculum areas to make sure that they've actually followed the procedure correct. So it will be a bit more of a guideline, and like I say, we're not going to be restricted by that at all. And then once we've submitted our grades, the exam boards will do further checks. Okay, and again, this is where they will look to see if it's in line with guidance, and this is where they will actually do some sampling. Okay, the actual process of the sampling is still unclear. We don't know how many subjects will be sampled or how many students will be sampled, but there will be some sampling just to have a look to make sure that what we're doing in school is in line with the national picture. Okay, so if I just come back to the evidence slightly, like I say, teachers are going to be able to draw on a range of evidence from across the whole of the GCSE course. So I know students were disadvantaged with lockdown that started during year 10 of their teaching. So there will be some evidence possibly from before we were sort of shut down that first time, from September to March when they were in year 10. And in fact, some students started their GCSE courses in year 9. So evidence there can be drawn on. Obviously, it won't be strictly used with that, because obviously students should hopefully have improved. So the more recent evidence that we have hopefully should be more suitable and indicative of their current level that they're at. Again, one thing to point out here is last year students were issued a grade on what teachers thought they would get had they sat the exam that summer. It's different now, and it's purely 100% on evidence. So if there is not any evidence that a student has achieved, say, a grade 6, we cannot award a grade 6, even though they may have shown some progress, say a grade 4, grade 5, and then we could see the clear trajectory that they may have achieved a grade 6 had we carried on. That's not the case. It's purely on the evidence. So if we've only got evidence of a grade 5, we can only award a grade 5. So we can't award that grade 6, even if they were potentially going to achieve that grade. Mentioned this already, so it may be homework tasks, topic tests, mini assessments, and PPEs, so the pre-public examinations, and that's the final assessment opportunities that we are going to be conducting in a couple of weeks. Additional assessment materials were produced by the exam boards and were made available after the Easter holidays. So again, that's going to be used within lessons, and that will help us sort of hopefully sort of narrow down the grades that the students are working at. And again, some of that additional assessment material is in the public domain, so students can use that to prepare themselves for the final exams. Any of the exams that we're doing, we are using the secure materials that are on the exam boards, which is password protected. So again, we hopefully can ensure fairness, and there's not going to be any certain advantage or even disadvantage with students conducting those assessments. And like I mentioned there, those final assessment opportunities begin the 10th of May. Students should by now have received their examination timetables, so they know when those exams are taking place, and they begin on that Monday, the 10th of May. Mainly condensed in those first 2 weeks, but we have left a little bit of a gap in the third week, just in case we have some disruption, in case we have any positive cases and we have to isolate with some students again. We've got that little bit of leeway if there's any students missing any of those exams for any particular reason. So when will students receive their grades? Now, I've already mentioned that A-level results day and GCSE results days are on the 10th and the 12th of August, and that is when the students will receive their grades. Okay, results of the final assessments will not be known. We're not going to be discussing any grades with students at this point. Any marking and feedback of work will be focused on knowledge and skills that the students need to do to improve. And you'll probably notice this with the recent data that comes out to you with the reports. We haven't put any grading on there, just their attitude to learning at the moment. Okay, and again, it's because it's so close to the final submission of the grades, and we're not allowed to tell students any of their grades. Any indication or any conversation we have regarding grades, again, can sort of not necessarily give the game away, but they may change. So we don't want to say one grade and then it sort of change, and then the students have that sort of surprise when the results come back. And again, this is the main point that we've got down here as well. Any pressure from students, again, and parents to influence grades can be referred to exam boards and possibly investigated as malpractice. So I think that's another reason why we're not discussing or talking about grades, because then it starts to open that dialogue, and we want to not have that conversation about grades or students wanting to then influence. The only way they can influence their grades at this point in time is obviously revising and making sure they do their best in assessment. Okay, for any further information and guidance, I'd just like to draw your attention to the following document, which should be a link underneath the video. So where on the website where you click the link to this presentation, there should also be a link to this document here that I've just put up, and it's from JCQ, and it's got some more guidance for students and parents on awarding these summer grades. So hopefully I've answered any concerns and questions that you may have had. But if there are any further ones, then that document is very useful to answer those. Additional assessment material is on the exam boards. And again, there's some good sort of frequently answered questions on the various exam board websites that you can look at. So the main exam boards that we do here are AQA, EdXL and OCR. Again, the students will know the exam boards that they do, and there's additional assessment materials that they can get access to. There's no mark schemes or grading, but it will give them an idea of the questions that they will come across. So that's quite useful for them to have a look if they wanted to do any extra revision and any extra questions. I'll just pop my email address there as well. So if you do have any further questions with regards to how these grades are to be awarded, then that's the email address there. But hopefully, come the 10th and the 12th of August, all going well, students will achieve the grade that they have well and truly deserved. And like we say, all the way through this presentation, purely based on the evidence. So it's up to the students now to prove to us and show to us what particular grades it is that they're getting. So yeah, any further questions, then please don't hesitate to email me there at the school. Thank you very much, and I hope this has been useful.